Good evening, everyone, and welcome to TalkSports, our weekly program where we speak with the movers and shakers in sports, the sportsmen, sportswomen, coaches, administrators, just about everyone involved in sports directly or indirectly. Well, as indicated, our guest and our special guest this evening is the newly elected president of the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee, Diane Henderson. And it's special because, as indicated in the media releases and such, it's historic. Okay, we don't have that many women in leadership positions, in such leadership positions, I should say, in these sporting organizations, especially in the Caribbean, and probably except for Lucia Fortina. Well, we'll get to find out who else in in the Caribbean, but it's big. It's big for women, I should say, and obviously something that can stimulate other women and young women in particular about their involvement in sports at the administration level. You know, a lot of them involved in sports. You know, they play years after year, they retire, and then they just go away. And what we will hear from Ms. Henderson is a whole involvement in sports. And well, going back, I could see that she has been involved for probably practically most of her life, you know, just being involved in sports. And whether it's by participation or administration as a former, chef de mission, manager, whatever it is like that. So just being involved in sports practically, and by the way, these things are not paid positions, so it's just volunteering their time. So let's welcome Ms. Henderson, who is speaking to us live from Port of Spain in Trinidad, and say good evening to her. Good evening, uh, Ms. Henderson, and welcome to Talk Sports. It's a pleasure having you. And I'm first of all want to say congratulations.
Thank you, Mr. Bass. Thank you for having me, and thank you for the congratulations. Glad to be here.
Right. And first of all, let's start off. Just give us an idea of your involvement in sports. Probably starting as a sports woman or sports girl, I should say, because it appears
Yeah,
that you have been involved in sports from since as a girl. Give us an idea
yeah.
of your involvement in sports.
Might be a bit long, but
Yes.
okay. So, as young people of my era started, we did sports in from primary school, and and my family is a sporting family, and therefore my father enrolled me in swimming as a child, as well as dance, as well as in school we did track and field, so I did high jump. I'm just naturally running, and I also did netball in high school, plus continuing the athletics. Um, and I used to ride bikes and climb trees with my brothers. So um, basically, I was the typical tomboy and always doing something, very active. Um, I continued swimming, but then sometimes coaching, and when you're young, you don't really want to take on the one of the reasons how I ended up in running on my own was because the instruction and stuff got me a little bit you know so I pulled away, but I went to start to run, and I remember gentleman from Hampton, and he spotted me by the savannah and said, was in my high school time or early 20s, and he said, what about coming to run, you know, middle distance, 8 and 15 and stuff like that. So I did a Paliseco race, and that's where my basically racing started. Uh, I did, many 5Ks, 10Ks, 15K, and went on to the marathon in 1987. Um, But during that time, I also got involved with the club that I was affiliated with, that is Trinidad and Tobago Road Runners Club. So having the need to put on distance running events, what we did was started to have events under Anthony Salome. So we, all the members, got together and we would actually execute the races. They would be planned and we would get a sponsor. And this is how distance running events and road running, as we used to call it, began, well, I shouldn't say began, but in 1983, we had our first marathon, so which is now 40 years old. So the Trinidad and Tobago International Marathon. So, with Rafiq Shah. So the whole thing about it is that, but a lot of the distance running events started to roll when you see we started to do that. Certain clubs, started to have distance running events. But that led me into other disciplines, and I had the base for the swimming, although I had stopped, and I joined triathlon. So I got involved with the road running club doing events, and then I went into triathlon, the sport, and then there was always something to be done that needed assistance or they always needed volunteers, or there was always something that you saw needed improvement, and I would always volunteer because that's what Diane does. So I did triathlon, and in the early 90s, in fact, when Trinidad played the US to qualify and we got knocked out, 1989, November 1989, I did a duathlon with Donna Pollard in Westmoreland, and we rode to Chaguaramas and back, and then I left my bike on the car outside the stadium. Nobody stole it, of course, in those days. and there was all this confusion to get in the stadium and so, because it was way packed. But that's how come my whole duathlon and triathlon, my love for triathlon and duathlon started, or multi-sport, so because in doing that, or beginning that, I also joined the Corky's Casual, which is run by Corky DeGans himself, and that's how I cycled. So in order to master my different skills, I advanced each discipline. I started back swimming, I did more cycling on track, road, and mountain bike, and I also ran a lot of races and did my training with whichever club I was with, Road Runners, and as well Hampton for a short period. My track was a little bit short-lived because I love the road, so that transferred there. But found that there was need for more attention for distance running, and therefore they needed representation on the N3As. So that is when they lobbied to get members onto the N3As. And I happened to be the first female that ended up being on the N3As to sort of represent road running. To be honest, I can't remember if I was just a committee member first, but I think I was assistant secretary at one point. So I can't remember, but I think it was 2-year terms at the time, because it definitely wasn't 4. So that was the early 90s, because I remember all 90, 91, 92, 93. I also did timing because of the timing experience from Trinidad and Tobago Road Runners Club. We did timing of races. That expertise went on to the timing I did at Carifta, or the timing I collaborated, and I got included in from N3A's events, athletic or track and field events in the stadium. I also volunteered in the timing. That skill got advanced again, and I also did it in Cariftas or CACs. So plus being a chaperone or manager for a triathlon team, and so the whole idea is that, and I should say that while I was contributing and while I was volunteering, the skills also were adding, because every time you volunteered, you went or maybe on a different position, or you took up something else. So
Right.
always adding to what you do. And therefore, that today is one of my skills that I can't ever, events and games and those things, and spreadsheets and dealing with all those things seem to come naturally, because and timing as well, because results, and stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
because it's just ingrained from since a very long time. So something I also did when I was young, give a little history on my father career side that added to why I was the way I was. My father told me, okay, did secretarial, go work. So independently, I did that. And also I continued to educate myself throughout. So wherever I saw and had an interest, or other than having an interest, had let's say a need to learn something to add to my skill, I would sign me up and go do it. So
Right.
there was sports medicine, there was sport management, there was, I was a track and field level 1 coach. I was a technical official for doing all those things. I also did I'm still a technical official for triathlon. So, because I renewed that recently, actually during COVID 2020. So, and still volunteer for those races. So, the whole thing about it is obviously you have to have a certain love for this in order to do it, or passion. Otherwise, I probably would have given it up a long time ago. So, that it really becomes who you are,
Right.
so that's just the beginnings. There's a lot
Mm-hmm.
more that goes on after that.
Right. Let me say good night to Rudian Sylvan from Toronto in Canada. Good night to Rudian. And of course, congratulations to President Henderson from Tanya Wiggins, who always tune into our program as well. But how would you say all these skill sets, you know, gave you that urge, and that means to transition from being a participant yourself, and probably I assuming that being an administrator now won't really stop you from participating, because I've been seeing some of your photos and your videos, and it seems as if you're still a participant yourself, whether it's the marathon or whatever. So how that transition took place from being a participant to an
I am not sure that I've transitioned yet. I'm still an athlete
administrator.
because
That's
I
what I'm
intend to
saying.
continue doing it, because I think that very early. So part of my career in where I worked, I always was in HR and doing employee relations and stuff like that. So I did workshops to um, educate, enlighten staff on several aspects of improving, enhancing their lifestyles. Could have been on financial workshops, it could have been on health, it could have been on anything. So whatever we felt the need in the organization. And so one of the things that health, I realized, was the most important thing. I know a lot of people have realized that through COVID. However, that is something that I've lived by all my life. I've tried to instill that in many of my family and my friends. Some of them know it very well. So I just believe that that is the most important thing, that we can't do anything without good health. And while we know that no matter what you do, when your time is up, or however God chooses to take it, it will happen. However, maybe we can have a little better life if we, we have do the exercise, follow good healthy habits or whatever. So that really pushed me to continue my athlete side of my lifestyle. I could never break them, because as I participated, I administrated. Um, it might have taken away other parts of my life, but the whole point about it is that those were my priority. Other than my son, those were priority because yes, I am a mother, and yeah, there was some juggling around there. But as some mothers would know, you take the child with you, and then they get involved. So we go on that in another in a moment. But yeah, so the administration side was also quite natural to me. I think as having done a secretarial base, that also was, I was quick with that. So administratively, that came. And then with the sport, I was able to offer assistance whenever it was needed. I did in 1991, I remembered I saw the file some time ago, and I did the sport management course that TTOC had in 1991, if that gives you any time lapse. But so obviously it's much more enhanced, improved now, based with the times. But just giving you a little insight to how long that was, and I never stopped adding to that along the way. I don't know if I'm answering that question in that transfer, but the transfer never happened totally because I'm still an athlete. I think you know. Mhm. I think you know that. Go ahead.
No, I was saying, in short, you're still a participant yourself.
Yes, and I still have goals. So athletes still need to set goals. People need to set goals, and even if it's not a high competitive goal, but it can just be a participation goal or your own self-achievement. Whatever you do to do it to the best of your ability, to ensure that I know Brian and the TTOC staff in 2018, when they found out I was doing the Ironman, they posted it all up. I didn't do it, they did it. So, and I actually broke the time by like 4 minutes or something like that. My previous time to that, break in 15 hours. So I was very proud of that couple minutes. But the important thing is that I achieved it. So we have to really want to keep at it.
Yeah. Well, so here is so Annette Knott is reminding us that proud of my new president, very capable woman who is still an amazing athlete. Ironman in the recent past. I guess that is what you're referring to, you know? Yeah, she's reminded us about that. Thank you, Annette. Annette was on our program some time ago, and again, it shows you the depth of women in leadership position, not just in Trinidad and Tobago, but in the Caribbean, representing the Caribbean. And I say that to say that now you are the head of the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee, President Henderson. You are filling a very big, shoe, I should say, because Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee, led by Mr. Brian Lewis, was a leader, I would say, in terms of Olympic committees, NOCs in the Caribbean, in terms of initiatives, innovations, etc., etc. And you are no stranger to these sorts of things because you have been part of the administration. How do you hope to continue that legacy of leadership, not just the TTOC, but NOCs, especially in the region?
I think thanks to Brian for being innovative and leaving the TTOC in a good position. For me, I think that's quite important. First of all, I can only say that I can be myself. First of all, not Brian, and use my own influence on the women in the NOCs throughout the Caribbean. Hopefully, I can be an influence for the women throughout the Caribbean that maybe it will show them, and maybe I can do something, have another initiative, and through ANIT and the Women Commission, Women in Sport Commission, that we will continue to forge that group of women forward in a manner in which we can inspire them and show them, demonstrate that it can be done and that they could step up. If I may mention here that the staff and the members of the executive of TTOC all participated at the Gabriela Muller's, that is Women Lead Sports Initiative, January, right? And this is her master program. And I just saw a congratulations for her on LinkedIn that, you know, she was really encouraging and the pointers she made. And so I will encourage any female to go and you know, participate in Gabriela's program, because there were some very important points or action items that she instilled in us that made me review it and say, you know, okay, sometimes you don't always make up your mind immediately, but then you start to ponder and think and say, okay, you know, maybe I can do this. So thank her for that. And yeah, I encourage women to do a program. In fact, let the NOC heads encourage their women in the NOCs to participate in these programs that give women that impetus to do something like that. It will get them there, you know. So through that program and the Women in Sport Commission, I'm sure that we can inspire a few women to take lead.
Yeah, that's the important takeaway there in terms of that. Now that you're in the leadership position, and certainly there are some things that you will want to achieve in your tenure. What are some of the immediate priorities for President Henderson as the president of the TTOC?
Well, first of all, I won't spill the beans because I haven't spoken to my executive board.
Okay.
But what I can say is that, and I have expressed this in other interviews, that
just one moment there, because I saw a question just posed there, and I think it may probably fashion what I really wanted to ask now that I see the question. It says, as president, where would you like to take TTOC, or what would it look like moving forward? Seeing that you have not met with your executive and you may not want to spill the beans, that may be a better frame of the question. Thank you, Rudian, for your question.
Maybe similar.
Yes, certainly.
One of the things that I would like to do and work on, besides all the projects that we do, and there are many, would be to, you know, really find us a home, a permanent home, I should add, because there's so much that, just to add to Brian's, or carry it forward of Brian's, that whole talk about being sustainable is and revenue generated, that if we have our own home, we can possibly unify our activities from one base, making it a viable establishment, you know, and we can do that for ourselves even more and better than we are in a position to right now. So that's one thing I would like to personally, and I am pursuing already. So sustainability is part of what I would like to see going forward, and that would assist and take care of a number of things in terms of definitely enhance the support for athlete welfare, you know, and we do the athlete welfare and preparation fund is there. one aspect I would like to add to or improve or top up or whatever you want to call it is the psychological services. I feel coming out of COVID and the impact of the pandemic, that psychological services for athletes more on an ongoing pace, on an ongoing basis would be better, much more beneficial to the athletes, because everybody's battling their own situation, each one of us in a different way, athlete or none. And they have more pressure to deal with, having other issues to contend with. So if they can deal with those issues, then we could probably move on. And you in your question, before the question came up, you mentioned something about NOCs, but let me just jump over to NSOs. I feel that because a lot of the projects we do are with coaches and technical, and there are many programs that we extend to coaches and in terms of high performance and raising the level for our coaches to help our athletes in all different sports. And if we somehow, through our good governance programs or education, we can get the NSOs to really step up, because there's still some things that we need to get corrected there. So that I would like to see the relationships and the synergies going in the right direction.
And certainly among some of those priorities, as indicated, two major activities, upcoming activities: the inaugural Caribbean Games in Guadeloupe, and then there's also the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham in the United Kingdom. Certainly, Trinidad and Tobago has been perennial participant, traditional participant rather, for the Commonwealth Games, but the inaugural games in Guadeloupe. Remembering that Trinidad and Tobago was initially the first, initially the inaugural host for that, but so many things that happened over the years, since from probably a whole decade ago. But certainly there's support from the TTOC regarding these games coming up in Guadeloupe. Let's talk a little more about Trinidad and Tobago's participation in these two important activities.
Right. So, yeah, a little bit about 2008, because a colleague of mine was the chair of the Caribbean Games, and we were all working with CLICO for the marathon on that CLICO committee at the time. And he seconded me to the marathon committee when he actually got chair of the Caribbean Games. So it's funny that that's how I ended up being chairperson of the marathon committee. So this year, we are quite happy that it's coming off again. It's long awaited. And the sports, athletics, swimming, futsal, netball, and cycling are the ones that I believe Trinidad and Tobago are participating in. So we're very happy to be able to, participate and be in those disciplines. What can I say? I can say that all the work is being done from now, and entries, and we're quite excited. I know, it's a particular age group, and that is needed. This games is needed for us to see where our talents are in this region, so it's quite important for the region to have these games. Similarly, as Pan Am had those games, or the Latin America have their games, so it's quite important for the Caribbean to have ours.
with the hope of the sporting events being increased. Okay.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, as the years go on, the hope is that with participation and boosting, hopefully, with the financial the financial status of the games, that we'll be able to, I think we, but it's all of ours, for us to enhance the numbers in terms of sports and athletes, so that it could come really a fruitful games.
Let me ask you, because I know it has been the dream of former President Brian Lewis regarding women in leadership position. Are you satisfied that we have the quota? Well, not just TTOC, but let's look at the region in terms of women in leadership position. Many of these international sporting federations have already passed constitutions or updated their constitution that have, quotas. Whether I think it's FIFA, I think the IOC might be a bit late on that. I think, I think World Athletics is doing something, but definitely organizations like FIFA, etc. What's about, let's look at the Caribbean, whether or not we are achieving that sort of quota in terms of encouraging and having more women involved in leadership positions like yourself.
Yeah. Right now, I know that the quota is less than 50% for sure, because I know that even when we were 50%, it was not 50%. And we are now, I think it's 70, 75, I think, I can't, or 66, I can't remember what they said, maybe 75. If the who does the constitution? So the committees have to decide. I don't know what all the terms are in the NSOs in the Caribbean, but somebody has to say, okay, let's work on this, let's do this. And the women can do that as well if they're in the positions to do that. But if they're not in the positions to do that, but they have to raise the have the conversation to start to say, okay, obviously it comes under governance, and wanting to change that. I think that's coming into Brian's point about term limits. And this is where it becomes important. There are very pros and cons. I don't see many cons, but there are pros to it, because the whole idea is that the world is changing, the Commonwealth is changing. We can no longer be old school as we have been for how many decades. So we need to actually, adapt and change the term limits so that new blood can bring those ideas. And because whether or not, unless you are re-educating and continuing to educate yourself, you will not. And in fact, a very big businessman told me recently, when I actually chatted to him about the possibility of this just recently, days before the election. The whole point about it is that he says, you have to hand over, because at his age, what can he bring to the table again? He's saying this, and he's a big businessman on several boards. So the whole point about it is that what can he bring to the table again? How much new information can somebody, when they reach a particular age, or if they're not, being educating themselves continuously, bring to the table? So you have to bring. There's a certain age in development that brings this. So we have to be real also when we look at development and what happens as you grow. What is the known researched age for bringing innovation and ideas? I'm not saying that our age we can't, but I'm just saying that it does slow down after 70 and 75, and there's so much you're going to. And we know we have, and I'm not hitting on anybody in seats in the Caribbean, but I'm just trying to say that we have to learn to adapt and give up, some space. So that goes for the women as well, not in terms of allowing women in to bring ideas from a different perspective as well as younger men, otherwise we will become stagnated, I'm just looking at it from that perspective in terms of term limits and in terms of changing and getting those percentages up, so yeah, that's partly some of that needs to be done.
Mhm. But for argument's sake, it's not that you totally want the old guards to move away, but there must be some level of transition. Again, I'm just saying for argument's sake, transition and incorporating collaboration, because sometimes they believe, or there's a belief that they must just move aside and just give up everything and move away. But in some instances, as we see, for example, and I'm using an example there with Brian, he's still part of the executive as the immediate past president. Certainly, he will have something to say, something to put into the pot, as we say, in terms of experience, etc., etc. And I think that is the conversation we should be having, especially
Yeah,
in the region.
definitely, and this is why the constitution and updating it to ensure that the immediate past president can still be there to, support, give maintain that input to teach, to guide, to whatever, whatever you want word you wish to use. But it's helpful. That's what succession is all about, planning for the movement and then ensuring that that could be continued throughout, so that the bodies can fruitfully keep going forward. Definitely, because they as well have a wealth of knowledge, and the whole thing about it is we can be creative and find ways in which to incorporate them. It's just like when somebody leaves an office, having been in HR, when somebody, a retiree, goes, there are ways that you can incorporate that retiree where their skill was to come back, or teach the younger workers, or have a training session with the younger workers about a particular skill, or you understand what I mean? So it's the same with, I don't see it different for an NOC. The whole point about it is that the NOC can incorporate that person even if after their term, their immediate past president's term is gone, you know. And we do welcome Brian and his input.
Yeah, and as it relates to the TTOC and governance, how do you hope to ensure that the national sports federations, those respective sporting associations that basically fall under the auspices of the TTOC, are kept in check, especially as it relates to the constitutions and the things like that. So because we know that in some areas of the Caribbean, that some associations only relate to the NOC when they need assistance, and there's no sort of, you know, coexistence, correlation, whatever it is like that. So, and then, things do happen at times, and then the NOC has to get involved to some extent. Okay, but how do you hope, from the TTOC point of view, that you can keep check on those, not the big brother type of thing, but can keep check on these national sporting federations to ensure that ultimately that there is also equitable representation at, whether it's Commonwealth Games, whether it's Pan Am Games, whether it's Olympic Games, CAC, etc., etc., and not just in some instances where you just have track and field dominating, but there can be track and field, there can be hockey, there can be boxing, football, etc., etc.
Yeah, first of all, I think we have 36. So mostly Olympic sports.
Okay.
The main thing is that first of all, we do already, whatever sports there are, we try to ensure that, well, we put it out there, and all the NSOs, if they have athletes that are participating and training and so on, they meet the criteria and the selection is followed, then obviously by process, and they are selected, they will participate. We as the TTOC go through a rigid process, and we do not sideline anybody from anything. In terms of ideas in getting the NOCs, what word you use about? You used a particular word, I forgot it. But I definitely have some ideas, but that needs to be looked at fully in a little more depth, because yes, there are some, the NOCs, we need to have a little bit more collaboration, and we need to look at constitutions a little bit more. So there will be there's need to be a bit more overseeing in terms of the governance aspect of how they operate. For the simple reason, some are very good, some are waver on and off, and then others are just total, not up to scratch. You don't know what's going on with them. They're no longer financial. You're not sure whether or not they still have a constitution or their financials are, so whether or not there's a president or secretary, or it just fall away on the sideline. So and there needs to be a constant communication. Some NSOs are fully engaged, and others, are semi, and others are just not there at all. As you say, maybe until there's need for. So one of the things also, is highlighting the different sports and getting back, because COVID has impacted that a lot in terms of getting kids back out playing, parents and kids getting active. So you bring them out in the communities, and this is where, a similar thought I have is also what is already a project name that we're relooking, that Brian may have mentioned in the past, or recently, and getting the youth out, and some grassroots, of course, so because we need to get people back into all of the sports, but the NSOs have to work on that themselves. They have to have initiatives in order to get their athletes back out, so I would like to see how we can push that, and try bring in the sports, highlight the sports again for the public to see, okay, this sport actually is there. I mean, it's not my duty, it's not the TTOC's duty, but at the same time, in collaboration with the NSOs, we need to do something to get them to do, but that would help broaden the number of athletes, because what has happened, the number of athletes have just shrunk. So we need to broaden that base again in order to get athletes back into the variety of sports that we have. And we have lots of sports. So
I want you to, and we continue on this discussion, because your election to the presidency of the TTOC is very historic for the TTOC in particular, and to some extent around the region. Safe and except, I think, as we said, for I think St. Lucia, right? For Tina Bellows. How do you hope that, and even going beyond the shores of Trinidad and Tobago, that there can be more women empowered to be engaged in leadership positions, and not leaving it up to a group of, as we said in a previous program, and Brad would have said it too, grumpy old men making decisions on behalf of women? And we heard the conversation recently with cricket, for example, West Indies cricket, a group of men making decisions for even women who are involved in the sport. There are a lot of women playing, and they play professional sport, but here we go, that just men making the decision. And when we look at various sporting associations, most of them are dominated in terms of executive position by men. How do you hope through your elevation to the president with TTOC can spur, or even if you can, continue that campaign to ensure that other women are empowered, not just in Trinidad and Tobago, whether it's at the TTOC level or, N3As or whatever sporting, associations that they are involved, but even in other parts of the Caribbean, probably through CANOC, because certainly you will have a say at the level of CANOC as well.
Right. So you remember I mentioned something earlier on about the Women in Sport Commission and
Yeah.
going to touch and base with Gabriela Mula and stuff. So that's one part. But maybe if the women who are somewhere aligned in the NOCs there must be one of the men that is in support of women. And if I may just use this as an example of what could happen. Let's say there's a subcommittee, or because if it is they're not looking at their governance or not changing their constitutions or that sort of thing. Why not incorporate a woman's a subcommittee that for any issues, but I'm not saying they will stay there, but that might be a way to get them in. I'm just looking at an option.
Involved,
incorporated with one or two of the males that could get their views and maybe that may be a way that may be the Women in Sport Commission, but not separately, but intertwined with the men so that they can get into make some decisions about women activity. Maybe cricket can do a subcommittee with women who make decisions and put forward a report for the women's cricket. Okay, if you don't bring a woman onto the committee, what about a women's cricket subcommittee? Okay, so subcommittees are possible. And that's just one idea, but there can be many that we could encourage. The NSOs and NOCs to take on. But it's a long road, and there are many opportunities or many ideas. But I think it has to go with conversation. It has to go with continuously looking at those methods of governance, as well as taking on the role of IOC and Commonwealth Federation. We have to look at what the pillars are and try to forge ahead in some form or fashion. I don't know if that answers it.
Yes, certainly. And I want to go back to something you touched on briefly, but promised to get back to the balancing that aspect of parenthood with sports. Certainly, it's a situation where a lot of women are challenged, on a daily basis, and certainly we have seen even professional sportsmen and sportswomen in particular, as we stay on the issue of women, like Shelley and Fraser Price. So it's one example. I was reading her blog today. She's in Africa. I'm certainly she's running this weekend, and I'm certain that there has to be some juggling between her as a mother, with a young child, and competing at that level. Let's talk about your experience as a parent.
First of all, I had my son, who lives in Sydney, Australia now, but I had him for 18 years. And I'll explain that. I sent him off a day before he was 18 to Australia to live with his father. However, my point is, for 18 years, I was always involved from the time I had him to that 18th birthday when he ended up going to Australia. And it was always participating, administrating, mothering, schooling, because I'll tell you, it's up to 2016, I completed a degree. And you have to have a support system and lean on the support system. Sometimes you don't have the support system and you have to maybe find a friend or carry them with you. So I have a couple of his school friends, parents, who also incorporated the buddy system for the boys, or some training friends or in triathlon who a good friend of mine up to now will call them, or my son as well as hers and a few others, her sons. So the whole point about it is that sharing helps to share the burden. And, at least you can get time, but it's all a time management and it's all a juggling situation, and I believe when you carry your children with you somewhere, socially, they get to be able to interact with people and adults as well, because they're always around, people. And so there are benefits to having them involved. But that lots of time management, lots of support systems, lots of juggling. And when they get old enough, sometimes have to be on their own. I know that mothers in this situation, COVID, I really empathize with them because they went through a very tough situation, COVID time, and being home, and that schooling. And I mean, up to now, there's a lady and her daughter that could not. She missed for whatever reason. She wasn't able to do her CXC, so she's now has to do it online, and she doesn't have a phone, she doesn't have a device to do it, but she would like to finish her exams, so I mean, this is a 16-17-year-old girl, and I'm really hoping that we can do something for her to be able to get that done, and she can sit her exam so that she can have a career or do something. Otherwise she is going to be lost in the system. So there's a lot that mothers have to take on, especially if they're single. And I spoke from being a single mother there. So for after the first 3 years, so that is tough on mothers generally.
There is a question here from Toronto. Would you be looking at Puma as a major sponsor for any major events you are planning to host in the future? I assume that big Puma.
Thank you for the question. Puma is still our sponsor for the Olympics 2024, and it is expected and hope that we'll continue the good relationship they have had with Brian Lewis and the team past. So if it is that opportunity continues and the discussions continue, yes, definitely. I hope that I can say that we would be able to, have Puma continue as a sponsor for any of our events.
And how much of a challenge do you think it is regarding, sponsorship in the Caribbean and post COVID-19? So many, situations now, and as Brian was speaking about, and I think you spoke about it a while ago, in terms of making your NOC, sustainable going into the future.
Yeah. Getting sponsors, the private sector has, I think. Say that again?
No, just go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. Getting sponsors and sourcing sponsors, it's a skill, because you really need to, that communication really has to give them back something for their brand. Otherwise, they have pulled back a lot with COVID, even from before. You understand, it was tough. So now with COVID, a lot of private sector and a lot of companies have pulled back, and they have to see the benefit in sport and their brand. They can get the benefit in their brand, but they need to. There has to be a lot of discussion and a lot of, I think networking, convincing, and that sort of thing. That they can get the benefit out, and that will multiply when these athletes and start to really be fruitful in their performances.
Yeah, well, certainly.
But it is a tough road.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's certainly the tough cookie ahead, and we're hoping that there's light at the end of the tunnel, because there's a lot of work to do regarding sports, and you folks are in the leadership position, the driving seat, where we hope that you can take us into the next few years and lay a foundation, basically, as you said, because one of the things that the TTOC, I must congratulate the TTOC on, is the whole issue of term limits, and I think it's to ensure that, as you indicated, that fresh ideas are constant on the table, 2 terms, and you still can, make a contribution, as the immediate past president, etc. And you hoping to bring new ideas onto the table, and this is something certainly that I want to congratulate the TTOC. And it's no wonder why I think since our program 2 years ago, for the past 2 years, there have been more officials from the TTOC on this program than any of the other NOCs in the Caribbean, whether it's from commission, whether it's the president, whatever it is like that. So, and I take it as the TTOC as one of the leading NOCs in the region again, and I'm saying because of so many initiatives and things around the TTOC. So that's why I'm saying you're in a position where you're in a critical position where all eyes will be on Ms. Henderson and her style of leadership and how she drives ahead with the TTOC.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. And any final words as we get ready to wrap up, Ms. Henderson? I know that you say it's still early and you still have to meet formally with your executive. I know there's been a lot of virtual meetings going on. There hasn't been too many of the face to face, but certainly the time will come when you'll have that face to face meeting with your executive. Any final words?
Well, no final words, only to say thank you, and I look forward to taking a day at a time, sometimes a week at a time, but all rolling in very fast. Thank God, I think I had that familiarity. I cannot envisage somebody who was totally not in here understanding what it is going forward. It is really very complex, and so many different things, as you say, so many initiatives that going on and projects that you really have to have your mind on it. But yes, I would just like to extend Happy Mother's Day to all those mothers out there, and to the general public. Get out there and continue to be healthy. Get your family out, get the kids out, because if you as parents get your kids out, probably we get another top athlete, talented. Maybe you notice or observe the talent in your child that you never noticed before if they're doing something outdoors. So have a schedule twice a week, 3 times a week, every day activities so that, we get more athletes and kids active, and therefore more athletes in the long run. So yeah, that's it basically.
Okay then. Well, I want to thank you, and I also want to wish you Happy Mother's Day as well. Thank you very much for accepting the invitation to be on the program, and again, it's so refreshing to hear from you and at least an idea of the vision of the TTOC under your leadership going forward. I want to thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay then. So folks, we heard it there from the president, the newly elected president of the TTOC, Diane Henderson, and live from Port of Spain. Well, I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina this evening, and yes, she is recently elected as the president of the TTOC, that's the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee, replacing Mr. Brian Lewis, who completed a 2-year term. Well, it's not 2-year term, 2-term, I should say, 2 terms, but a 2-term limit, yeah, because their constitution, that's the TTOC's constitution, has for a 2-term limit. And as they indicated, to ensure that there's always fresh ideas on the table and no one will be there forever. You know, congratulations to TTOC on that. And as indicated, they have always been a leader, you know, always willing to come and talk about their programs, their initiatives, and, you know, very accountable and transparent in terms of their activities. I can't say that for all the NOCs in the region, you know, somehow. Oh, I must say it's also to Mr. Keith Joseph. Yeah, Mr. Keith Joseph at St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Yeah, he's always willing to come out and talk and discuss issues and things. Yeah, thank you very much, Ms. Henderson, and thank you very much to our special guest on, our, you know, viewers, Rudian, Sylvan, Tanya, thank you very much. Gordon, Annette, Not, who was also on our program, she's the chair of the Women's Commission, you know, and she was, you know, brilliant with, you know, these women. I'm telling you, I have more confidence in women leadership now than, as they say, men. You know, when you look at the Supreme Court, just a set of men, well, except for, you know, the 1 or 2, 2 women who are there now, but it's just a set 3, I should say now. Just a set of a group of men that making decisions. When you go to Privy Council, similarly, you know, ICC, IOC, you know, all these things. Just men making decisions that are also affecting women. Thank you very much for being on our program. It's a pleasure. Again, happy Mother's Day in advance to all the mothers. You know, whether you mother, grandmother, auntie, whatever it is, happy Mother's Day. And also to the men who have been, you know, providing motherly duties. Thank you very much for being on our program. The invitation is yours to join us next week for another in our program, Talk Sports. I am Michael Bascom. Good evening.